Tom, thanks for joining us here today.
I know.
We really appreciate you coming to share some of your thoughts on everything that's been going on. Can you kind of fill us in a little bit about what things have been like for you running a dental lab over the last few months during this pandemic?
Sure. I'd love to share it with you. We all like to share the misery. Uh, Starting in March, of course, when the breaks started to go on. Now, remember, my business model is a one-man technician, a laboratory. And so my account base is obviously a little bit different than a lot of people out there. I have a one-man band, and I'm catering to people all across the country. So, I thought that would insulate me a little bit, only because every area seemed to shut down at a different time. But pretty much the brakes came on all at once at the end of March. And I had a lot of cases in the beginning stages, middle stages, and towards the end of the stages of completion. And I had a lot of stuff billed out, and it just came to a screeching halt. March, April, May, June, it started to open up again a little bit. I was starting to see some work. July, a little bit more. I guess really I've watched it in, not for me like a big jump in, but more of a gradual progression of opening of offices, and then a bunch of phone calls. Where's the cases at now? Because they're back at the office. So in that regard, I've noticed, this slow increase for me. Now, I have a study club online, Zaleske's Online Removable Study Club, and I have people from across the country there, and some experience like a big jump in, like all of a sudden they had more work than they knew what to do with, and they were calling back people. Others, like myself, experienced a slow, gradual progression to reach, full capacity again. I'm not at full capacity, but I'm probably at about 80% capacity of what I was before this whole thing hit. So, the big one for me is I noticed was that now I'm not being asked to expedite things as quick, and I think a lot of that has to do with the new norm that's going to be at the dental offices, which is you don't have 5 patients all sitting in chairs or in the lobby waiting to be put in the operatory, or sitting waiting for a doctor to jump from operatory to operatory. It's more a one at a time kind of a thing.
Have you noticed any changes in the types of prescriptions that you're receiving from the clinicians? Are patients and doctors looking for different things right now than they had been before the start of the pandemic?
For me, no. I never had expedited work. So first off, it's very difficult, and not impossible, but it's very difficult for me to do things like relines and repairs and flip them around quick enough. So most of my accounts use a local laboratory for those types of services. So as far as the type of workflow or the type of work coming in, it's still rather comprehensive. I do get standard conventional type prosthetics, but probably, and I don't know if I mentioned this to you before in an interview, but my business has gone more into the hybrid bar type of fabrications. And it's also gone in more into smile design and the nuances. I think that this whole digital thing has brought about those who still do it traditionally to emphasize the nuances, and those nuances have to be quite dramatic in order for a person to decide one way or the other. So anyways, my business has basically stayed pretty much the same as far as the model goes and what I'm getting. That was my short answer, by the way, Noah.
Now, when you and I spoke, during the spring and early part of the summer, you had said when you were shut down, there wasn't much to do but clean your lab and just kind of organize things. At 80% capacity, you get 20% extra time. Are there things you're still able to do that you wouldn't have had time to before? Or are you just kind of like, okay, well, this is the work that's here, I'm going to, go.
I've never been a guy that sat around and twiddled his thumbs. So, what I did was I started getting I'm big on texts,
Hmm.
textbooks. So, I went to Quintessence, and there was a few things that I wanted to beef up my knowledge base on. So I ordered a few books online. That way I went on Amazon Books, found some old texts that were at different schools that then they sell online, used books,
Hmm.
and started to beef up my knowledge base a bit more. You can only clean your lab so much, and you can only do, I can only take a walk for an hour so many times, and so I needed some more stimulus, and so I found that if I'm going to secure my position, and most laboratories I'm sure are the same way, most technicians, you're going to secure your position in anything, you got to continue to stay smart. So I just
Hmm.
figured I'll use the time to stay smart and get smarter if I can, and go from there. But my pool's nice and clean. Uh, uh, I actually lost weight. I didn't gain weight, which is kind of interesting. But a lot of people say, well, how are you handling this whole thing? But I've always worked from my home for 34 years. So the only thing that's changed for me is that I don't get a chance to go to the nice restaurants in the area for lunch. So I think that's probably attributable to my weight loss.
Now, as someone who works as a one-person operation, you have the ability to be, directly in touch with the clinicians sending you cases in ways some bigger operations don't. What were you
Right.
hearing from your customers, both during and, now after the shutdown times?
Well, the first off, when you get to talk to them again, we both lamented about how slow it was and how horrible it was, and our own little personal stories. But after that, you know, again, everybody feels kneecapped on this thing. Everybody wants to start running with it. Um, we don't talk about anything more or less than we used to talk about before, because again, I'll go back to my business model. The communication. I do these kind of things with my doctors. We do Zooms, we do texts on the phones, we trade videos with the patients, to see their conditions. Photographic protocols are always in place, because that's the only way we can get the highest, best results. So as far as communication modalities go, I can't think of one person that uses more or less communication than before this whole thing. I think maybe we've kind of refined it a little bit more. Zoom, of course, aids in that. I think more and more people are comfortable with this media form. And
Hmm.
I know I am. I mean, as much as I've done them for the last 20 years, I'm more comfortable with them now than I've ever been. And I feel that my accounts, the practitioners I work with, they feel more comfortable, and we're seeing a benefit from it too. There's an
Hmm.
enhanced benefit with all this extra communication. Now, you just said it yourself. I'm a small laboratory. I need those types of tools if I'm going to set myself apart. Can't be like everybody else. I make and have already had the time built into my schedules for these kind of things, but larger laboratories, uh, it's run and gun. You got to get it in, you got to get it out. And these types of communications between doctor and laboratory, uh, from the guys that I've talked to, has not increased all that much. Oh, sure, there's a few guys that have found the benefit now more so with photographs and maybe some video conferencing, but I didn't see a big jump. I mean, there's a few. This is the mantra I've always had, which was, you got to talk, you got to communicate, you got to have it's a two-way street, and some people buy into that and realize its benefit once they get involved, and some it's the old adage, I just don't have time.
Hmm.
So there we go.
Now, besides the lab work you do, you mentioned you have your study club. You've been an educator and, someone who's very willing to share what you do in this industry with
Absolutely.
colleagues for a long time. Have you found increased interest from other lab techs that this is that time to learn, just like you were doing? Are there more people taking your courses right now?
Yeah, well, here's the thing. I mean, my phone rings more. I
Hmm.
have a lot of people that call. I'm very accessible kind of individual. So, and I make no bones about the fact you can call me if you got a question. Just don't waste my time, kind of thing. So I actually have people that like have a list of things sometimes, and they'll call me on the phone. As far as interest, like in my YouTube channel, I have about 3,000 people who are subscribers to that channel. I have not put a lot of new content in there. And part of that's because I've been busy with other things, but I didn't see an uptick in subscriptions. As far as presentations go, I had 5 live presentations outside of the laboratory at your local conference scheduled, but those they were all canceled. I have like $1,500 in airfare credits right now because I had like the first half of the year already planned out on shows I was going to attend. So that's kind of fallen to the wayside. I would just say that in the study group alone, and then individual people calling me, I would say that maybe a little bit of an uptick in people interested in that, in boning themselves up. By the way, that's my ring. I got somebody delivering something out there. But I really haven't seen an uptick, noticeably large uptick. I'll put it that way. And
so one of the things that's also been going on within the lab space, directly in your area of expertise, which is removable dentures and those those restorations, the hybrids, exactly. Thank you. Is the fact that there's a lot more digital processing. A lot of the manufacturers are coming out with new materials and new systems for trying to produce these faster with fewer appointments. And you were a part of an article that we published in the return print issue of Dental Lab Products that was about the fact that there are certain things that you can do digitally that are fine, but other things just can't replace that. Where are you at? Are we able to do removables on a digital process that can provide the quality of something like the handcrafted techniques that have been used for a long time?
It's a loaded question. I mean, it's a good question, but it's loaded. I mean, in order to gauge these things, you can't do comparatives against the worst of the worst or the worst against the best. Unfortunately, marketing is such that it's easier to compare yourself against the lower end of something than it is to compare yourself with something that's of equality. Okay. And so what I mean by that is the process itself, and there's still a battle royale going on out there as far as milling, printing, printing, we have machines to sell, but with that being said, I mean, each system of those two have their own inadequacies or all failings. Time involvement, obviously, with the milling technologies, there's a lot of time involved. And when we're doing these kind of comparisons, I always hear the comparisons for how long it takes to fabricate something, how expeditious is it, how quick can we crank them out? And then the other part of that is how much training is involved. I hear more about process training. Probably 80% of what they talk about in the digital fabrication is all about training a person in the process of how to design and everything on a computer, and less about the actual smile design and the function and all that other good stuff. The stuff that comes in the books, the stuff that a person who's doing it by hand has to concentrate on, okay? And so, for me, I mean, I don't get people saying, I can't use you because you don't have digital. I don't. I mean, I use digital. I provide digital products, digitally fabricated products, as part of my offering. That would be like milled bars and stuff for for hybrid fabrication. But for actual conventional denture fabrication, it would take me more or equal time. It will take a person equal time to do what I do by hand, if you're going to put all the nuances and things that I put into my product using the digital. And what I mean by that is the color characterization, the tooth positions, all of those things, the smile design stuff, that all takes time, whether you're using a digital process or you're using, traditional processes. I just feel that the end result, and I've seen them online, I'm not being a jerk about it, but I've seen the digital products and I've seen the hand fabricated products. And if you compare the best of the best, digital loses. Digital loses. Now, if you want to compare the best of your digital products with mediocre to low end traditional type of products, which is what's going on out there, then great, then that wins. Then digital wins that war. But we don't have enough technicians to do traditional fabrication. People are running away from it because it doesn't pay. If you don't own your own business, it's tough to make a good living working for somebody, on a grunt line, where you're fabricating, in a what they call it, the mass production type of setting, where you got model guy, you got a setup guy, you got the lab can't charge enough, and they can't pay enough, And so the leaning towards mediocrity using the digital, and for all intents and purposes, it's mediocre. Now, don't get me wrong. There are lots of benefits to digital design, the speed and all of that. But, I still, without composites to build up the colors, which takes time, and all the other stuff, it's still, what works best for your lab and what are your clients asking for, I guess, or what you're promoting to your clients. I promote 9-hour heat cured resin dentures with hardened teeth that are made of composite materials and individuality of setting the teeth. And others, if you're going to print or mill something, you can't make it look that individualized because it's all mono, it's all one. And those nuances, if you do it the right way, you definitely, when you lay a good one against the best one can be made one way and the best way, one that can be made the other way, traditional still wins.
In terms of the hybrid cases you're doing right now, do you have a preferred, type of bar you're working with in terms of materials for that? Or are the dentists requesting what they prefer to use? I'm curious what you're looking at in those restorations.
Well, okay, so for the hybrid fabrications, it goes through all the steps to figure out where the teeth are all going to go. For the accounts that I work for, they allow me to source who's going to mill that product, and it's titanium. Okay, now, and I'll tell you why. The other materials that are out there, and they've got your composite bar material.
Yes.
I won't name names. Doesn't make any difference, but everybody knows what I'm talking about. It's composite, white composite bars that you can either mill by hand or you can put it in a milling machine and mill them out. My feeling on those is that there are too many moving parts on those type of fabrications for long-term success. And what I mean by that is you got to bond the cylinders into the material. So there is a junction there. Then you also have the composite material and the resin that you're going to overlay on there. All of those have different flexural properties. And you get that in the mouth, all hell breaks loose. I think, 10 years from now, I believe that if we're not seeing them already, we're going to see a bunch of delaminations and micro failures and stuff like that. I could be wrong, but I don't like, if I'm doing a hybrid case, I need to warranty that hybrid case, and I can't warranty it past a certain time. And the other part is the poor doctor, he's delivering something that the patient feels is going to be definitive, that they're going to have for a long period of time, if not their whole life, at least service them for a good portion of their life. So, I just think the jury is out still, and there's a whole lot of no talking going on out there, if you know what I mean. I think that there are a lot of people fixing things and they're not saying a word about it because of the fact that, like I say, there's a lot of moving parts. So for me, I always offer the highest best I can, do as much research as I can. I find out the strengths and the failures from all the processes, and then I try to figure out which one to integrate best into my system. And right now, that seems to be titanium, with plenty of room and good design and planning, all of that good stuff.
Yeah, and it seems to me you just said something that I think has been true in this industry for a long time. But on the lab side, there's a lot of thought about the actual physics that take place in the mouth, the bite force, the torques, all of the various forces that act upon these restorations once they're placed. And not that clinicians ignore that, and I think that plenty of them think about it, but the clinicians have to deal with a patient who has no concept of that and just wants to see something that looks invisible to anyone else looking in their mouth. That doesn't seem like it's a restoration. So do lab techs have kind of a higher duty to make sure that they're steering clinicians in the right direction to provide the function that will support that form?
Well, I would hope so. I mean, I know that my clients depend on my expertise and knowledge in those areas, material science and design parameters. I mean, I looked at, just for instance, I looked at some of those composite products to use for bars, and I did my own personal testing on them, and I didn't like what I saw. And I was all set. I had a couple of doctors that said, whatever you feel is best, because they really do put their trust in us. I'm that guy, just like he's the guy. When a person's laying in the chair with his mouth open, the trust goes to them. So, they trust me to know what I'm doing, know what my recommendations are, not recommending something just because it's something that I happen to like, but something that I happen to understand and know will benefit the patient first and the dentist second. Because I'm a very patient orientated laboratory technician. Everything that I do, and I'm sure many technicians I've seen crosstalk, we care a great deal about the patients. And so I attack the situation whenever I'm selecting a product or material or technique to use, the benefit, and would it go in my own mother's mouth? I always look at it that way. Would I like to have a dentist put that in my mother's mouth? And I do due diligence, and I think a lot of technicians do. I know a lot don't. There's a lot of marketing hype in every profession. It's not only ours. We're not unique to that. But there's a lot of marketing hype on stuff. And, I don't have to go very far to point out examples of where dental technology embraced a product that later turned out to be a massive failure. Okay?
There's a few of those that,
hey man,
yeah.
I'm speaking the truth. I think a lot of people appreciate the fact that I'm quite candid about things like this. I just want to make sure everybody, you got to have a long thought process on this, because, we're not in it for a day or a week. We're in it for our life if you love what you do. So,
yeah. And you kind of brought up some of the, things. The dental lab technicians and dental labs themselves are, in an interesting space in the industry, because dentists, of course, all rely on labs to help them complete the care that they provide to their patients. Patients are rarely aware of the labs that are doing the work unless they happen to be sent there for some sort of shade match or a fit test. But, patients don't have a lot of awareness of what you guys do. Is there something that, you'd be looking forward to kind of help lab technicians kind of get a little bit more, I don't want to say attention, but a little more credit in the mind of, the people who are wearing your hard work in their mouths for years and years and years?
Yeah. Well, here's my thing. Here's my take. My take is this: I get compensated for what I'm worth from my accounts, and seeking public attention, it really, for me anyways, it doesn't have any real value. I'm pretty happy with what, like I say, my compensation is pretty much my kudos for what I'm doing, As far as the public knowing, I know there are a lot of people that know who I am. You'd be surprised how savvy patients are. They go to a dentist and it's not like they walk in with blinders on. They've already been on the internet. I get phone calls from people all the time who say, hey, I went to your YouTube channel. I saw you on Facebook. I see you here, there, and everywhere. I'm a patient seeking treatment. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And, I've funneled patients to different practices that way, but I don't get anything extra for that. Here's the thing. It puts me in a very tenuous position, because I don't want to badmouth clinical dentistry, and I won't, because they got their own challenges. But, you get patients that call you and then they start questioning on what they see online.
Uh-huh.
And then you're in a position where you've got to decide whether or not, how do you answer that question in an honest, truthful way and not mislead somebody, but then not also inject your own prejudices too. You know, that's a very tough thing to do. So would I like to have more visibility, or do I know of ways to have more visibility? I don't think it really matters, because at the end of the day, the patient can't come to us directly. They have to go through somebody else. So, you know, other than having our own dentist promote the fact that there is a dental technician in the game, I don't think any one type of way to get visibility, the what's in your mouth campaign and all that. I prefer to have the, you're going to hate this, who's in your mouth campaign. Because, you know, there's a whole lot of guys out there that are doing chairside immediate load things that have not 1 ounce of formal education, and they're dental technicians that are delivering stuff in people's mouth. I think the more importantly is who's in your mouth, not what's in your mouth. You know, they talk about the materials, but you got a dental technician that's sitting chairside with a dentist over his shoulder, and he's doing work in your mouth. I think that's more important than knowing any of the other stuff. But that's just me. I kind of go offline a little bit because my prejudices start to get involved in that too.
Well, in terms of looking forward, you know, you mentioned you're probably at about 80% of what had been your, you know, capacity regular workload before. Do you see this, you know, getting back up to 100%? Most of the dentists I talk to seem to feel like they don't know how to get out of this, you know, operating at about 70 to 75% of their normal, you know, workload, because they just can't fit more people in with the current, you know, need for
guidelines. Yeah, the guidelines. You know, that's the thing I think they're going to be fighting is the guidelines. Do we, you know, soothsayer, you know, I'm looking to the future. Did they come up with a vaccine? Does that then loosen the constraints, you know, with distancing and everything else? I just don't know. I don't know how under the current guidelines that they can increase to 100% capacity like they were before. I just don't see it. You know, if somebody knows something more than I do, that's great. But where I'm standing, what I see is that I see that that's going to, I hate that word, but it's the new normal. I think 80% of what they used to do, just like gasoline used to be 30 cents. Yeah. I think it's a thing of the past. I really do. I think that, you know, there's just so much you can do. Now, maybe there's a business model out there, and it's possible where they could run more patients through the office, but I just don't know what it would be. I really don't. You know, you can't have people sitting in chairs, you know, and you can't go from one to the other. And I mean, you have to admit, you have to disinfect, you have to then readmit. I mean, you know, that word, that phrase, moving parts again, you know, there's lots of things going on, and time to do all that setup and everything. That's difficult, man. I just, you know, I feel for a guy who depended on mass production, you know, to earn his living, because I think in this case, you know, 20 patients a day within a 8 to 10 hour workday, man, that's pushing it. But in a day, I knew a lot of guys who could see 20 patients in a day, because they'd have a guy doing amalgam here, take a impression here, boom, 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 you know, jumping back and forth. Not going to happen. Not going to happen.
Now, you know, in terms of just your lab and your work, is there anything new and exciting you're working with in terms of materials, techniques, products, or anything you've heard that's, you know, coming soon that's got you kind of, you know, your curiosity piqued?
Curiosity piqued. You know, not really. I mean, my curiosity's piqued on some things that I've been reading in some of the texts and some of my extra reading, but they're old things. You know, they're things like, why didn't I think of that? Or, oh, that makes total sense, you know? No, I mean, and I have my finger on what we do out here pretty well. If it's a digital product, I probably wouldn't know about it anyways, because my curiosity is not in the digital products. It's in the nuances of what we do to service the patient as far as smile design and function would go. But there could be some materials out there. I'm sure there's guys working on something diligently. I do know this, that one of the major manufacturers of traditional products has basically terminated a lot of the products I used to fabricate
Mhm.
and distribute among dental technicians. I don't know if you've heard this already.
Yes, I have. I've
And
seen a lot of product lines are being thinned across the industry, and it's
yes,
specialty areas that are being one half of it is being cut off to service the other half. Things,
yeah,
in orthodontics especially.
and so like a lot of people are going, oh no, and I'm going, oh yes, because we become what I do. We
Hmm.
becomes more specialized when there are less players in the game. Okay, that
Hmm.
be materials and everything else. So if they're emphasizing on the digital rather than the traditional type products, that says to me there's obviously less dollar amounts for them and less interest perhaps in the traditional forms, which means that what it means that it's a good chance that I'll have fewer guys that I'll have to compete against to provide the traditional means. I look at the bigger picture, and to me that says, hey, you know what, I like being specialized, and that's what dentistry's done for years. You got an endodontist, pedodontist, right? I mean, everybody's a dentist, and then they refer. Same basic
Yeah.
principle.